Please welcome to the stage Marco Lauers, Aurelia Kostaki and Bhuvan Pawar.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm very happy to see that so many of you are still here at the end of the day, which means it is an interesting day. As introduced, I'm Aurelia Kostaki. I'm leading intelligent automation for UI in EMEA, and I'm really happy to be here with you today. Having worked with UiPath for more than 6 years now, when UiPath was a more small startup in Bucharest, I'm really, so happy to see the progress till where we are today. And I'm also happy because during these years, together with the ecosystem of partners, with organizations like UiPath, with our clients, we have evolved significantly the automation concepts from the pure small RPA, as it was years ago, to the hyper-automation concepts that we want to share with you today. With my colleagues here, with Marco and Bhuvan. So I will start by asking Marco to introduce himself and then to let us know the story of hyperautomation in UI.
So thank you, Aurelia. So hi all. So Marco Lauers. I'm a partner in technology consulting for EY in the Netherlands, and also involved in many fun, I should say, because that's what also I have learned today, fun engagements and projects on RPA, but also on intelligent automation and also certain aspects also of AI and blockchain, etc. So that's my role within EY, within the Netherlands. And to come back to your question, Aurelia, so we have engaged with UiPath, especially now on our internal processes, enterprise processes, around 6 years ago. Then we started to have the initial conversations, and we truly kicked it off around 4 years ago with an internal program which was related to a full global SAP rollout, where on top of it we applied UiPath and automation, and we called that MPath. So that was the name of the project. And the key reasons why we started that is that we would like to simplify and improve our processes, our internal enterprise processes, and also to improve our deployment capability. So rolling out SAP towards all countries and all regions, and with less training effort. And that's what we actually did together with UiPath. The initial goal was to achieve, to reduce the amount of work with 3 million hours, which we achieved by now. So that's a major achievement which we reached. With the help of UiPath. And where we started is that what we've heard today is also simply by starting with a couple of proof of concepts and seeing what happens and how that works. But when we were at the stage of 20 to 30 bots, then we realized something else needs to happen, because we cannot scale. And that is also what we have heard today. There's a lot of points around how can you now start scaling RPA or intelligent automation towards the future. And that's where we together, because we're consultants, so that's nice, we have those people also inside, we started to build the whole COE around it, the governance around it. We got, let's say, the board leadership also being involved in the program, so in this case from top down, and then we started to roll out multiple bots. And in 18 months, we more or less deployed it to 500 bots. And along that journey, we continue to build our whole deployment strategy, our development strategy, how to deliver it to production, and also started to learn certain aspects which we have also heard today a lot of. But the key lessons learned was also continuously to involve business leaders and also line managers, which are actually part of the game, in that whole journey. And by doing so, we created the whole engine around it. And in the end, as we speak, we now actually have deployed UiPath, addressable to 150,000 people globally as part of our SAP rollout. And if you look at it now, what is now the usage? Because we also see, of course, well, people also need to learn to work with it. We have now, on a monthly basis, around 40,000 people literally using continuously the automations on top of the SAP system. And what we have also seen now within in the past year is that also around 4,000 people, they also actually start to use developing robots by themselves. So doing citizen development, as we all know. And that is quite interesting to see and how that evolves. So if you ask, where are we now in our journey, is that we always talk about 3 generations, where a generation talks about RPA, where you often have a cost-based conversation. So you talked about cost savings, reducing FTE. Then the second generation, which is generation 2, then we talk about intelligent automation and integrate automation. So you combine more or less multiple technologies within your automation journey. And I think that's where we now are. So we're using, in the UiPath program, mainly attended bots, but we also start to look at unattended, OCR, of course, but also process gold. So we start to involve and include many more technologies continuously. And we're still now looking and preparing ourselves for generation 3, as we call it, which we call AI-powered automation, which means is that you have your conversation more based on insights. And I think even the first speaker today, he also talked about it, where you move from data to information to insights. And I think that is what we see as EY, the future, is that you actually have a full AI engine behind automation, and you actually make decisions based on insights, and then change your processes or change the way you operate in an organization. So that's where we are now today.
Thank you, Marco. I would move now to Bhuvan and ask you similar question. Where are you in the automation journey?
Thank you, Aurelia. Hello, everyone. Before I start, maybe a quick introduction. My name is Bhuvan Pawar, Head of Innovation and Analytics for Asahi Europe and International. We serve one of the most, or some of the most amazing beer brands globally. To name a few, Pilsner Urquell, Peroni, Grosh, Asahi Dry, and Kozel. So we serve actually, to our consumers, that happiness, that experience that we bring back to our work as well. And this is how our journey started, right? So we started connecting our digital journey with our consumers, with our users as our employees, and also our suppliers. And I think where we are in the journey is, we always try to connect it back to our strategy of Better Future in 2030, where we wanted to go full digital or change our portfolio and enable our people to focus on business value-led activities versus stick around and doing the mundane task and repeatable activities. And this really resonated well with the CEO, with the CIO, and the CFOs. And the whole suite was aligned that we need to embed this program of innovation and analytics into the core strategy for digital. And we also reimagine ourselves. We don't call ourselves anymore IS or IT organization. We call ourselves #digital organization. And that hashtag really become a fire in the jungle. We really became famous with this hashtag digital. And we started driving really from the front, which is not only about just RPA as one of the technology conversation, but more conversation of involving people and talking about their business problems at hand, how they see that in day-to-day life, the decisions they're making requires them to spend a lot of time on retrieving some information from a system, right? So we really put the technology on the back of our discussions, and we really brought forward our conversations with them, talking about their business problems and their day-to-day life, right? And that has changed the thinking for us, right? Because then they didn't see us as a technology team, but they see us more like advisors, a consultant, those who are helping us to, helping them to build the business case together. And then when we started with EY last year as our strategic partner, together with Aurelia and one of our other partner, Vijay, we made a conscious decision that we don't want to call ourselves an RPA team. We want to call ourselves an innovation team, because then through that innovation, we are driving those different problem statements, business cases, and then underlying that whole funnel of ideation, the technology became just an enabler. And that technology can be any kind of technology. It can be RPA, as simple automation, or we started using, some of the niche technology like computer vision, machine learning, artificial intelligence, really, really early in the game. So we never started from Gen 1, actually. We always started from Gen 2. And now we are in the journey to go a little bit step further, where we want to adopt the Gen 3 kind of generation of automations and, bring more, niche technologies to help us enable our people, our business teams to make the right decisions and deliver the best digital and the brand experience to our consumers and customers.
Thank you, Bhuvan. Indeed, it is a very interesting journey, especially that you started directly, as you mentioned, with Gen 2 approach. I would come back to you, Marco, and ask a few questions regarding which are the lessons learned from the UI journey that we can share with the audience here.
Yeah, so it's actually quite close to what Bhuvan is also indicating in our internal journey, where we, of course, also used our lessons learned also towards our clients. But I think 2 points which I would like to highlight. One is what we learned is that you always need to more or less look at the business challenge of an organization or a function or a business unit where you start talking to. So don't start to talk about cost savings, FTE reduction, etc. And more or less, I think we're beyond that stage. But take into mind again is that we started 4 years ago. So we learned it along the years, is where you need to understand their position, where they're facing issues and problems. And when you do so, is they will tell you the business problem, and then you can see on how automation can help resolving their business problem. And if you do so, is then they will be interested in automation. They see that it actually resolves problems for them, instead of that the focus is on cost savings and on FTE reduction, etc. And that truly changed the situation in certain cases. And secondly, what we've also learned is that I sometimes call it RLM, so robotics lifecycle management. That is something which you need to take into account. So a robot or an automation, you develop it, but you also need to maintain it. You need to bring it live. You need to see what happens in infrastructure and in the application landscape in the future. So you continuously need to, nurture it, also in a production environment. And that's where, we created production guidelines, production handbooks, which are ongoingly being used, which provides the user all kind of elements on error handling and etc. So those are mainly the 2 key lessons learned, which we got and still using now within our projects as well.
I would link to the first one that you mentioned, the business challenge, the business opportunity, actually, because indeed this is one of the characteristics of the approach of the Generation 2. Yeah, the Generation 2 requires different approach, different methodology to bring it to life. And the focus on different value drivers beyond the financial value, so going to employee value, customer value, even social value, it's one of the characteristics that we see in such projects. And with this in mind, I would ask you, Bhuvan, what are similarly lessons learned from your organization?
Since the morning I'm here and I'm hearing like just common themes, that everyone is going through the scale discussion involving the people in the organization, and then this bot lifecycle management. What we did, we actually partnered with our supporting functions at the same time, because we realized that even though we were one of the supporting functions at #digital, but then there were other guys like security, finance business partners, HR, and they were not involved in the past. We brought them onto the table. We brought them onto the party. And when we brought them onto the party, we started realizing the value that those guys started becoming creative about how the business cases can be seen, not only from the monetary benefit per se, but also driving some qualitative benefits and some experiences and unlocking the values which are not limited to only just headcount reduction and cost saving in the bottom line. And that kind of the one thing that we really driving with our teams and with the EY and internal teams as well. And then we made a swift change in the thinking. So when someone is coming up with an idea and we are automating this process, the journey, we also called out that each of these automations requires a parent, right? Like a father or a mother, right? Or a guardian. And we started calling them bot managers. First, everybody was a little bit surprised. What is this bot manager? What role do you expect? Is this bot manager a technical guy? And blah, blah, blah. But then eventually, we started explaining the concept of the bot manager, and we saw that it started to work out because people then started to, accelerate the journey in their functions. Plus, they were also able to increase the percentage of the automation, what we automated originally. They started bringing those business exceptions back into automation and leveraging more the automations as a solution from them. So I think these are a couple of things that we did, brought forward some of the enabling function with us, and also introduced the concept of the bot manager.
Thanks. I know there are many things that you could share on both journeys. Maybe the last question for both of you. Having in the room many organizations that are now looking to scale up, what would be the recommendations you have for audience?
Well, I think the most important thing which we have seen is that you need to consider automation as not as a one-off project. So we also discussed that before, but so that is often what I still see happening, that it's considered as a project, and then afterwards, then we stop doing it. So you need to see it as a completely different way of working or a way of operations. So it's not a one-off project, it's something which will truly change your whole organization, and that needs to be realized, and that's where you need to do the storytelling and in how that will affect the whole organization. And I think that is the most important thing when you start working on automation, or even when you're in the middle of it, you need to realize that it's not only a project, it's truly a change of working in your whole organization. And I think that's the most important thing which you need to put in mind.
I think I would just add and complement, right? And we changed the mindset of our team, right? We said, guys, you no more work for an Asahi Europe, but you are a startup within the Asahi Europe. And when they understand the startup analogy, they started actually engaging with the internal stakeholders from a very different perspective. And that kind of, brought a different energy in the room, different kind of positive conversations. We started making or living our purpose, which we call it making meaningful connections. And then that's kind of driving our pipeline. So far, we have had 2 out of the possibles as a result of that. And we have about 200 ideas which are in our pipeline that we can, put into the prioritization and start to discuss. So I think be bold, take a first step, don't be scared about it, and then create those success stories and ambassadors, those who can actually vouch for you across the organization. So these are the small things that you continuously do, and then act like an entrepreneur or a startup mindset. And I'm sure, you'll have the same journey to share with all of us here.
Yes. Thank you. And probably at the end, I would mention that such events where we learn from each other and we share our experience are so valuable to progress and to make our program a success. Maybe some closing words from you in Netherlands.
Yeah, so that is indeed. I guess is that what I mentioned before is that is the key thing. Maybe just as an addition on what I was just saying is that what we often see, and that was also the discussion around scaling, which is quite complex. And I think Bhuvan also made a very important thing. You need to start to realize that whole pipeline management or opportunity management, and you need to push and push and push for that. So you need to have ambition, you need to have focus, and you need to have perseverance. And if you don't have it, it will not happen. So that is, I think, a key thing which, just as an add-on, which you need to have in place in your organization to be able, to achieve, let's say, the goals of automation and the change of ways of working within an organization, and not to end up in, and that's also, of course, what we often see, in some kind of a, let's say, start-stop modus. So that's where you start an automation and you stop again. And then everyone starts to wonder again, like, why are we doing this? So that is the key thing, from my perspective, as a closing, is what you should truly keep in mind. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. If you have any final thoughts?
No, I think just enjoy this and celebrate the success together with your teams. That's very, very important, because that makes sure that you're not looking at those guys as your idea generators only, right? So make them part of your journey, make them feel important, and then lead from the front. That's what you should do. So that's it from my side. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would like to thank you both and to the participants and to wish you to enjoy the automation journey. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.